Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, a very attentive crowd. Thank you for allowing me to interrupt your conversations and your lunch and to offer these welcoming remarks at this symposium on the role of attorneys general. I'm Jeremy Travis, president of John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Delighted to be with all of you. And I think I made the rounds of each of the tables. There's nothing better in the life of a president than spending time with students. And not that all the students aren't wonderful here, but there's a particular energy in the room today, which I'm very excited about. And the number of you who are here because you're thinking about law school as a possible next step after John Jay is just very gratifying. As I said to, I think, every table, one thing that we're proud of here at John Jay is that we're the only CUNY senior college that has a pre-law program that intentionally sort of works with students from beginning, your first day here till the end, and even afterwards, after you're an alum. If you want to go to law school, our job is to help you get there, to get into a good law school, and to get as much financial assistance as possible, so you can graduate with the least debt as possible. And our success rate over the last almost 10 years now we've been doing this has been phenomenal. I'm going to see if I can remember, and Elizabeth will help me, with the numbers from last year. We had students admitted to, how many law schools? 80. Charles, yes. Good deferral to your boss, right? Charles, 80
different law schools and over $13 million in scholarship awards.
So there's a round of applause here for the Pre-Law Institute. So this is one of those initiatives just grows with time. When we started, I think we were very happy that we had 20 law schools that accepted John Jay students and a couple $1 million. Over time, what happens is, first of all, students get better. We prepare them better. They do better on the LSAT because we're helping them take those tests. But the reputation of the John Jay students in the world of law school admissions councils and law school faculty and law schools around the country grows and grows and grows. So the good news here is that you have options. And if this is what you want to do, we'll help you get there. You have to do the work, but we'll open the door. Right? So that's the deal that we make with you. And if you're here today and that's what you're thinking, and you don't have to go to law school, but if this is why you're here, and if you see Charles Davison, who I'll introduce in a second, or Elizabeth Broccoli, they'll help you figure out how to make that happen. Okay, is that the deal? So that's one reason why we're here. So in a larger sense, one of the things that we like to do at John Jay is to expose our students to those who are thinking about law school to the enormous variety of legal practice, ways to use your law training to have a good professional life, to advance the cause of justice. We're all fierce advocates for justice. That's why we're here. To work within a profession that is one of the most respected professions in our country. And it's remarkable how many ways you can use law training even if you're not a lawyer. So I'm a lawyer, but I'm not practicing law as a president. But every day in my job, I use the fact that I have been to law school. And so we want you to think about a variety of career options where law training can open doors. And you can go practice law, of course, and you can do other things, policy work, you can do political work, you can do all sorts of things, or simply just be a better citizen. Because you'll understand the law, you understand what it means to be in a country governed by the rule of law. All of these are important for a John Jay graduate. So even if you don't go to law school, having these concepts in your head as you finish your education here and go on and do something else is really important. So one of you, and I'm going to call on you, you're a science major, yes, right? Forensic science major. So here's a science major at John Jay, one of our more demanding majors, right? And your first name is? Brianna. So Brianna told me as I was making the rounds, she's saying, science, law, malpractice. Those doctors who do terrible things, right? I can put this all together. That's the way we want you to think. Is this opens options for you that you might not have thought of. And your name, sir, behind Marcus, your name is what? Michael? So Michael says to me he's interested in working for the ICC. Who knows what the ICC is? And you do. Charles, that's not fair. What's the ICC? Right. So for a John Jay graduate to work on international human rights violations in the International Criminal Court, puts together our sort of global presence, puts together our, I don't know what you're majoring in, but it could be international crime and justice or something like that, and legal training. So just the options are varied and can fit you once you have legal training. So today we're talking about a really important function in our democracy, and that is the role of state attorneys general. So this is, I'll say in the scheme of things, it's not as high visibility as some other important functions in our government, as you might, it's not a governor, it's not a legislator, it's not a DA, it's not even a U.S. attorney, it's a state attorney general. But what an important role this is. And that's what we want to help you understand today, is how valuable this government resource is to us as citizens, how important it is to ensuring our rights in an enormous range of activities. And, end of day, guess what? They have to employ people. And some of them, maybe more of them, can be graduates from John Jay. So we have a very selfish interest here, which is to help you understand this as someplace where you might want to work. Who is already working in State Attorney General's office here? Somebody, that's not fair. Put your hand up. You're an intern there, right? So is there anybody here from Mr. Schneiderman's office? Not here, other than you, right? Yeah. So what do you do in the Attorney General's office? And you said you're in Brooklyn.
I'm in the Consumer Frauds Bureau, so I get to do mediation and help the Assistant Attorney General investigate any investigations that help him research any investigations he's doing.
All right, and you're a first-year student, right? Yeah. So how cool is this? I mean, she's basically doing justice work while she's here as a freshman, right? In an Attorney General's office on consumer issues using mediation and investigation skills, right? Those skills are important in lots of ways. So one of our explicit goals here is to help you understand the options available to you, certainly as a first-year student, but also as a lawyer. So days like today don't happen by themselves. There are people who come together to make it happen. I want to say thank you to some of them. First of all, there's a special thank you that goes to Markus Green. He works at Pfizer. He's Assistant General Counsel at Pfizer, which is a mega company, a big company. And Markus, stand up. And there's one other thing that's relevant about you to this group. So what should they know about you, Markus, as in addition to... Say it loud, say it proud. John Jay alum. What year?
95.
95. Majored in?
Criminal justice.
Any other criminal justice majors here? There you go. You could be sitting where Markus is. So why do you have an interest in the work of the Attorney General? This is where you talk about somebody else. Markus, why? Did you ever spend time working in Attorney General's office?
Absolutely.
So.
I served as Chief of Staff under Peter Harvey.
There we go. So John Jay alum, criminal justice major, goes to law school, works as chief of staff to Peter Harvey, who I'll introduce in a second. How cool is that? I mean, chief of staff, my chief of staff is probably the most powerful woman at John Jay, right? She makes the trains run, and watches the paper flow, make sure I get to where I have to be. So chief of staff in government is a really important role. So Markus has been a great friend of the college, active alum, works on veterans issues, works on these issues, and he and Mindy Bockstein in my office and others helped to conceive this day as a day when we would bring people together to say some important things about the role of State Attorney General. State Attorneys General. I always have to get the plural right. It's tricky, I know. So we have other folks here who I just want to recognize and thank. I mentioned, I'll introduce Charles in a second. The Pre-Law Institute is the other co-sponsor of this, but I mentioned Mindy Bockstein. I just want to thank Mindy, who's our Director of External Affairs, who put this together. And I'll introduce, say some things about Peter Harvey in a second. But we have Lynn Ross here from the National Association of States Attorneys General, a colleague of mine from the Clinton administration, which brought us together years ago, many years ago. It's good to see you again, Lynn. Good to have you here. And let's see, where's Norman? Norman Green is here, who's one of those quiet fans of John Jay. So you come to lots of events here, you sort of take a close look at us, and you keep coming back. That's a good sign. Norman is a very well-respected litigator, practicing lawyer in New York, and has connections with another John Jay alum. What's his last? I'm trying to Fareed. No, yeah. Mohammed Fareed, right? Went to CUNY Law School, then clerked for Judge Weinstein, and then on to Patterson-Belknap, right? Yeah. So. Yeah, got it? Okay. So it's great to have you here, Marcus, and we do appreciate that. So let me just take a moment to, I have to leave as soon as I do the next introduction, which is of Charles Davison, which I'll do in a second, but I want to just say how lucky we are that your speaker today is Peter Harvey. So Peter has held the position that we're talking about, Attorney General in the state of New Jersey. He'll probably say this, but it's a little bit different from some other Attorney General offices in terms of being an appointed position. But during that time, he quickly established himself as a major innovator in criminal justice policy, law enforcement policy, took on difficult issues, sexual assault, auto theft, gang violence. We were just talking about the Policing Institute that he established at Rutgers, our sort of sister college across the river. And I was a speaker there once and went to a number of lectures there. It was really a sort of an intellectual center for thinking about policing for a long time. George Kelling was one of the founding scholars there. So Peter is known in our world as being a thoughtful public servant, a thoughtful law enforcement practitioner who cares about communities on the ground and the ways that we respond to crime, to victims of crime, and try to bring crime rates down. He's now in private practice, so he's left that position, but he's not left that sense of public obligation. So Peter, if you watch the press, has just been named as the monitor for the settlement of a federal lawsuit involving the Newark Police Department. So this is, our police department now also has a monitor, Peter Zimroth, two Peters. He was our corporation counsel, actually similar trajectories in private practice. So Peter Harvey is now going to be responsible in a very important way for the reforms of the Newark Police Department. And I'm hoping that there are ways that John Jay can support him in this very, very important public responsibility. So Peter's here to talk about his life, his work, but also the role of the Attorney General. My regret is I can't stay here because I have something else to do. But I just want to say to Peter how really flattered we are, humbled by your being here. This is he's just a regular guy, but this is a really important guy. So thank you, Peter, for coming. So my next job as your opening speaker is to introduce Charles Davison, who will take it from here, and he's going to introduce Marcus, who will introduce Peter. So in the life of institutions, sometimes for unexpected reasons, sometimes for reasons that are just a statement about life is frail. We lose people from important institutional leadership positions, people who do important work for the college. And some of you may recall that the Pre-Law Institute for many years was headed up by a spectacular individual named Vielke Holness. And she lost her fight with cancer, and we lost her a year or so ago, which was a big, for those of us who loved her, it was just a big hole in the heart. In terms of the work that she was doing here, heading up the Pre-Law Institute, and really bringing it to this national prominence. I mean, people come and talk to us about how to do this. When the Bar Association writes something in the National Law Journal, it's about John Jay these days. You just have to realize how fortunate you are. It was Vielke who built that. So there was this question in our minds, all of us who think we have something important going on for our students here and for the legal profession, and particularly for bringing diversity to the legal profession. There's some of us who said, "Oh, can we sort of hold it at that level?" So we are so fortunate that we had within our midst, heading up the Center for Advancement of Teaching, Charles Davidson. You'll hear from him in a second, and you'll understand better why I feel so lucky as president that we can have a new leader for the Pre-Law Institute and for the larger goal of establishing a first-rate honors program for our students and helping them apply for special opportunities. I'll say this to praise Charles. We just learned day before yesterday that John Jay, if you know about this scholarship, you'll know how prestigious this is. 3 of our students were just awarded the Jeanette K. Watson Fellowship, which is a 3-year fellowship, 3 summers paid for, one of them overseas, one of them domestic, one of them in New York City with great mentoring. So 3 is that's a big number. It's even a bigger number when you realize that no other college had 3. It's even a bigger number when you realize that that 3 represents a quarter of all the CUNY J.K. Watson fellowships. So John Jay our students are now just recognized, you're recognized as being the most competitive for these external scholarships and awards. And that's what Charles's office does, is to help prepare you. We drill you. We do mock interviews. We work on your writing sample. We know you're good. We just want the rest of the world to know you're good. Right? So Charles will get a lot of business after that pitch because he's overseeing a world of fellowships for you outside of John Jay that are now available. But let me just tell you about why we're so lucky to have him. So Charles has a number of initials after his name. He has a PhD in international relations, right? So you're going to connect with him from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts. That's one of the best international relations schools in the country. He has a JD after his name. He has a law degree from George Washington University. He has taught international law, and he's been an advisor to our country in the Middle East and the former Soviet Union on rule of law issues. He has worked for a number of federal agencies on legal issues, including the Justice Department and the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And we're fortunate that he's been now the director of our Pre-Law Institute and our Office of Special Honors and Programs. So please join me in welcoming Charles Davidson. And pardon me for having to leave, but got to leave.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Jeremy, for that lovely introduction. I'm just going to say a few words on behalf of the Pre-Law Institute. As President Travis said, I'm Charles Davidson, and I am the director of the Pre-Law Institute. I think I know virtually everyone, and I think I've met virtually all of you here today. For those of you who know me, you know that I love events like this because I love to see you all show up and invest in your future. Right? That you're here today means so much to me. Right? We invited you, and we were hoping that some of you would come. I am so pleased that so many of you RSVP'd and showed up, because it's never a given with students, that you actually RSVP'd and you showed up. And I have to tell you that it means so much to me, because as I work with helping you get into law school or grad school or in your fellowships, not everybody does this. Other students have other things to do on Fridays. And some of it, look, if you have to work, I absolutely understand it. But some people really find the time and the energy and the drive and the motivation to invest in themselves. And that's you, right? And I'm so proud of you, right? No matter what you do going forward, I just want you to know that we are all very proud of you, because you are the students who really make that decision to invest in yourself. And the dividend, there will be a payoff from this. And I really just want you to know that that's my initial feeling about this day, is that I'm just really impressed, and I'm just really pleased to see you all here. The only other thing that I want to point out to you, though, is that this experience is really, I think, an exceptional one. It is not very often that you get a group of people like you have here to come and speak to students at the college level. This is done very often at the law school level. We see these kind of programs very frequently in the law schools I've worked in law schools that I know about. It's less common that people of this stature really come to the undergraduate level. I never had an opportunity when I was your age to have an interaction with people like this. I might not have done what I did had I had this opportunity, right? I might have never gone to the Justice Department. I might have done something else. But I just want you to know that this is really exceptional. And I want to offer that to you to sort of give you a container to understand how unique this is. You have people here who are going to do something that's really important for us, and that is, and President Travis used the word, expose you to something that you might not have come to on your own. Part of our work is really helping you and supporting you in your path to law school or grad school or whatever it is you're doing. But really, the big part of our work is simply exposure. We just want to expose you to things you might not come to on your own. And today is an enormous day of exposure. And for me, exposure is so important because it helps you become more informed and intelligent decision makers, right? You can't make good decisions without good information. You can't make good decisions without knowing what's out there in the world. Today, you're going to discover something that I think many of you might not know a lot about. And that's the work of these offices. I think a lot of you may be here because you think this is another place where lawyers can get work. And I think that's true. I mean, obviously, lawyers can get work in the office of an attorney general. But I want to point out that there are lots of other people who can get work in these offices, too. The range of jobs. I just went on the New York, the Office of the New York Attorney General's employment website just today, just to look for fun, to see what's out there. There were jobs for scientists. There was a job for a social worker. There was a job for a forensic auditor. There was a job for a criminal investigator. There are obviously lawyer jobs as well, so law students don't freak out. But there are other jobs, right? There are other jobs. And so I think that's really, really, really important to point out to you all because we very often get in this narrow mindset of thinking this is all taking me to law school. But, you know, there are lots of things that you can do that are law-related that don't require a law degree. Right? Law school is for some people, it's not for everybody. And I want you all to know that we have no design in pushing everybody into going to law school. What I want for you is that you be happy, is that you have a career that is meaningful to you, that you do something in this world that actually makes you happy, but it does something for somebody else who cannot do it for him or herself, right? That's what we're going for, right? I love the numbers of 80 law schools and $13 million. I love all of that. But what I really love is when people say, you know what, I got a job that I love, and I'm actually helping these people, and I'm actually doing something, and I go home and I'm so happy. That's the success. That's the metric we're looking for, right? So I hope that with that in mind, you all will take full advantage of this day, that you will listen. I invite you to listen very carefully, listen very closely. I invite you to be the students that I know that you are. I invite you to think about what questions, the conversations that we're going to have today, what kind of questions they raise. I want you to think critically about what you hear. And then I want you to do the thing that I always invite you to do. I want you to use the opportunity that you have today, because you're in a room with people who you might not always be in a room with, but I want you to use that opportunity wisely. And that means I want you to use this as a networking opportunity. That is with our esteemed guests and with your colleagues, because I know you don't all know each other. And there are important synergies in this room, and I want you to capitalize upon them. We have a structured opportunity later for you to network and to speak with our guests, and I hope that you all will take full advantage of that opportunity. Okay, so I really invite you to enjoy this exceptional day and to take full advantage of it, because it really is an extraordinary opportunity to have this happen, particularly at this stage in your academic career. So with no further ado, let me introduce the person who you really want to hear from, and that is Markus Green, your John Jay alum. I'm just going to say a little bit about Markus. Markus, as President Travis said, is the Assistant General Counsel for Pfizer, the world's largest pharmaceutical company. This is a huge company. And he's worked as the Executive Assistant Attorney General for the state of New Jersey and the Chief of Staff under the Attorney General Harvey. He was part of the Attorney General's executive staff, assisting with staff supervision of more than 9,600 employees. Are you hearing this? This is John Jay, right? 9,600 employees that comprise the Department of Law and Public Safety. He oversaw complex civil and criminal litigation and helped to implement Attorney General policy initiatives, including the Help America Vote Act state plan with an operating budget of $180 million. The statewide fugitive task force, the statewide automated victim notification system, and the abandoned vehicle initiative. His prior experiences include service under Manhattan District Attorney Robert M. Morgenthau as an assistant district attorney in the trial division, where he prosecuted assault and robbery cases, among other crimes, and later in the special prosecutions unit, where he prosecuted complex white-collar fraud. A proud 1995 graduate of John Jay with a Bachelor of Science degree, summa cum laude in criminal justice, Marcus graduated with honors from Rutgers Law School. You all welcome home Marcus Green to John Jay.
Good afternoon. You know, it's interesting. It's good to be back at John Jay, but it's interesting walking around, looking at the buildings. None of this stuff existed when I was here. I mean, we were in a abandoned shoe factory that looked like and smelled like an abandoned shoe factory. It was really bad. No, seriously. But in all seriousness, a lot of credit, all credit, should go to your president, Jeremy Travis. You have a tremendous leader. I mean, this doesn't happen by chance or simply by, getting funding. It's vision and it's leadership. And to do this under a city university system is nothing short of amazing. So even though he's not here, I think we should give Jeremy and all the members of the administration that are here a round of applause. So I guess I'm supposed to talk to you about, how I have come to stand here, which is, it's one of the things that I really don't enjoy having a conversation about, like largely because sometimes you go to these conferences or meetings where the panel is set up to talk about, a person's career path, right? And basically it amounts to them telling you how great they are, and nobody wants to hear that. So what I'm going to do in just a few minutes, it's because it's really very unlikely and improbable for me to be standing here, right? I am, I don't have, my father had a 6th grade education, my mother had a 4th grade education. I grew up number 7 of 8 kids in a 2-room house in New Jersey. And so I knew nothing about being a lawyer or even going to college. So if you want the honest answer, it was kind of the love and support of 2 people that knew nothing about education other than the fact that it was important for me to pursue one. That's why I'm standing here. And what I can offer you is a few things that I've kind of learned along the way, right? And basically two things that I think will be helpful and of which you should probably know, but I really want you to emphasize the importance. The first one is obvious. Work extremely hard. Now, when I say work extremely hard, I see a few people nodding their heads, but I'm not talking about, just putting in enough effort to do well. I'm talking about going the extra mile. If you are sitting here and you have not experienced anxiety, stress, angst over coursework, you're not working hard enough. It's extremely important. Your sole mission here is to come out with the best academic record you possibly can to move to the next level. And if you're not approaching that every single day with that in mind, then you're failing, regardless of what your marks are showing you. So hard work. I mean, because there'll be a ton of people who are smarter than you, but there shouldn't be not one person that can outwork you because you control it. So that, the notion of hard work, developing work ethic is extremely important. And it starts here and it starts, in undergraduate. And it'll carry you through the workplace. And so, and part of that is, everybody's, you're all in undergraduate education, and within college, there's always slackers, right? We all know them, right? They study half the time. They're they're hanging out, but they manage to squeak by. So what you ought to do is take advantage of the slackers. And what I mean by that is use, because they provide the curve, right? Use the slackers as an opportunity to stand out, right? I mean, it becomes, it's a lot easier hill to climb when you have other people who are mucking it up. It's absolutely true. And I'll tell you a quick story about the slacker phenomenon. So I'm a 1L, a first-year law student at Rutgers. And before there was, computer-generated grades and numbers, you went to a wall. And everybody's grades were posted on the wall, and you had a number, a student ID number, or the last 4 digits of Social Security number. And I remember being a first-year law student, looking at the wall, other students are gathered, and people walking away in tears, people throwing things, visibly upset, because on the board was, there were A's, B's, but there were D's, C's, and there were F's. And for my year in particular, it was so bad that the dean of students called an assembly. And the dean walked in, and, people are still, it's still clear people are upset. And he started off with a simple question. He said, how many people in this room were on the dean's list when they were in undergraduate? Every single person in the room raised their hand. Then he said, how many people graduated at least cum laude from their college? Everybody raised their hand. How many summa cum laudes? And more, half the room raised their hand. And his point was, the slacker phenomenon is less and less. You're now in an environment where you are competing with other superstars. So the level of competition, the amount of intellect, the abilities are different. You're in a different arena. This is not undergraduate. That was the message. And so while you're here, take advantage of the slacker phenomenon. Use it as an opportunity to stand out. It's extremely important. So develop the work ethic. The second point I want to make, and I'll introduce our esteemed guest, is relationships. Relationships, and in every way. One of the most amazing things about John Jay's education is that a good percentage of the professors and teachers are practitioners. Either they are retired police lieutenants, they are practicing lawyers, teaching at night. You have an opportunity to engage these folks who will ultimately be colleagues, to learn from them, ask them questions. I mean, this is not a time, undergraduate is not a time to sit back and observe. You have to get engaged. This college has a tremendous amount to offer, but you have to get it. And you do that by developing relationships with other students, teachers, faculty, real relationships, and seek people out that share your values and that are helpful to you, that encourage you. And get rid of the knuckleheads that say you can't do it or you shouldn't do it. Surround yourself with people who are positive, that are going to help you get to where you need to be, and cultivate those relationships. Don't just, come and ask a question or ask for something. Ask to serve. If there's a professor that has a huge class and needs help with a research project, see if you can help out. So those are the two things that I want to leave you with, right? Work hard, cultivate relationships. So now, the task at hand. So, Peter Harvey. There's a tremendous amount that I can say about Peter. Tremendous amount. I had the good fortune of bearing witness to true leadership for 4 years in Trenton, New Jersey. And if you've ever been to Trenton, or if you ever have any experience with state government, leadership is a scarce resource. It really is. Thoughtful, smart, hardworking, courageous, everything you want in a leader, that's Peter Harvey. And I'll tell you a quick story that will give you kind of a window into who he is as a leader. So I don't know how many of you know about the world of attorneys general, but there are primarily two ways an attorney general becomes an attorney general: through an election or through a selection process, an appointment. In New Jersey, there's an appointment. So the governor nominates an attorney general, and then that attorney general goes before the Senate, and there's a confirmation process. And so, and most attorney generals, right, they like to keep their options open. They generally have their eyes on another prize, a higher office, right? Either they want to run for governor, they want to run for the United States Senate. They want to use it as a stepping stone to get somewhere else. And the sort of inside joke is that everybody in government knows that, right? So if you have an attorney general that you know ultimately wants to do something else, that requires a certain amount of being careful, right? So you don't want to step on too many toes, because if it's a state senator, you may need that state senator if you want to become a judge or you want to run for higher office. So Peter Harvey gets nominated by then Governor McGreevey. There is a press conference. We're all gathered in the State House there. And at the press conference, Peter, from the very beginning, says, I don't want to be a judge. I don't want to run for governor. I don't want to seek higher office. My only goal is to do the people's business and ultimately go back to private practice. So as you can imagine, the hush that went over the room, right? The fear, that's Peter Harvey. And so without further ado, General Harvey.
Thank you. I didn't know you. I'd forgotten about that. I think the advice you just got from your fellow schoolmate and soon your fellow alum is as well as it could be put. Let me put in context his point about relationships. I'll tell you two things. One of which is this. The beauty of the New Jersey legal community, and I'm in both legal communities, New York and New Jersey, is everybody knows everybody. And in fact, we have a reference point that we say in the federal system. We call it the federal family, and it really is. People are connected, having nothing to do with race, gender, or age. And so if you are acting like a jerk in a deposition or in a meeting, there are about 8 people who hear about it, including judges, because you don't know who's connected to whom. And so when you think you're being a tough person and you're being unpleasant, or you're not being completely candid with someone, or you think you've pulled one over on them, there are about 8, 9 people who've heard about it. And so when you encounter them, they're looking at you with the side eye because they've already heard about you. Example number 2. Here is what illustrates the point. I had been litigating in private practice in New Jersey music industry cases. So, for example, you all may remember a song called Who Let the Dogs Out? Well, I was in that litigation in Toronto and Manhattan involving the 2 writers who were based in Toronto. One had claimed all the credit when, in fact, the other had done all the work. I had the latter. And I was also in a litigation with, I was suing a very well-known music artist who had been nominated for about 8 Grammys. The only problem was that she was claiming to be the writer, producer, and arranger of a particular album that got great acclaim, except she wasn't. It had been a collaboration, a true collaboration. And we were fighting it to the death, and we ultimately settled it. That artist was Lauryn Hill. The album was The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. And one of the reasons you never heard from her again was because of this litigation. And there were a number, the artist team were her friends. she cheated her own friends. And these were people of integrity, I mean, young guys. But the leader of them is a person of real integrity. And he said, all I want is the right credit, and all I want is the proper royalties. Well, I finished all that, and a friend called me. And he said, look, there's a new governor that's been elected. I said, I read about it. He said, you know this guy? I said, I met him a couple of times. He said, well, look, they're going to need a first assistant attorney general and a director of the Division of Criminal Justice. I've recommended you to hold both positions. It's only been done maybe 2 or 3 times. I said, I'm not interested. He said, you're kidding me. I said, no, I'm not interested. He said, can we have a cup of coffee? I said, I'll have a cup of coffee with you any day you want. So we have breakfast, and he goes, how's your practice going? I tell him about these 2 cases. I just finished. I'm doing some other stuff. So he's telling me about how great these positions are. You'll be in the paper. You'll be this. You'll be a big guy. And I'm going, okay. And then he says, well, it's too bad you're not interested, because they're going to end up giving this position to a real jerk. And I'll tell you the names who are in play right now. And he said, and you know the worst part about it, Peter? There are going to be some young black kids in Newark and elsewhere who are never going to have the opportunity to see what that department can do and somebody like you in it. And I said, so tell me about these jobs again. This guy, who's Italian, and my dear friend, he says, well, you know, Peter, us Italians got to stick together. I said, always. You get my point? That's how I got put in the game. Minding my business, but because I had a friend who had been trying to put me in the game to be the United States Attorney, and it came down to me and another candidate. That other candidate is actually the United States Attorney in New Jersey right now. Though that's what Marcus Green means by relationships. If you aren't intimate friends with people who don't look like you, you are losing out. You're losing out on perspective, on point of view, on learning. What if I told you that for the rest of your life you had to eat the same thing every day? You would say, you might as well take me now. What if I told you you had to see the same movie every weekend? My point is that we seek variety in every other aspect of our lives. We have to do it in the relationships that we have. And I mean intimate relationships. I mean on your worst day, who shows up to make sure it's okay? We all are the product of people who've given us support, encouragement, love, strength when it really mattered most. And as you build your team, these are people who help you and help achieve the goals that you all have set forth, because it's always team. You never win by yourself. People who think that way are legends in their own mind. But you win because you have a collection of people who share your views and move ahead. So, attorneys general, you've heard about the New Jersey office. When Marcus and I were there, it was 9,600 people, 10 divisions. We had in it the New Jersey State Police, which was at that time 3,000 troopers, 1,000 civilians. They had all kinds of laboratories, DNA laboratories, which we helped bring, also computer laboratories, which we helped develop with the FBI. They had the juvenile justice, so all the residential facilities and the halfway houses. Division of Elections, Marcus took control of that process because after the Bush-Gore election, Congress made a lot of funds available for the Help America Vote Act. It had 3 tasks, one of which was to create a statewide voter database. Still hasn't been done in a lot of states. Secondly was to bring new electronic technology to states. Marcus brought that into the state of New Jersey. And the third thing was voter education. Marcus developed a relationship with Russell Simmons, and Ben Chavis brought into New Jersey hip-hop summits we had two of the largest in the country. And for the first time in history of the state, because of Markus's work, we registered more than 5 million voters in the state of New Jersey. All through this energy that we created, we had commercials done by all kinds of people. Reverend Runn did a commercial. You know, Kenny Anderson was still playing basketball at the time. He did a commercial for us. Queen Latifah. In fact, we shot Queen Latifah's commercial right out here. And she was in a lackluster movie called, I think, Taxi or something. And she was in it, so we shot it right outside of the Mandarin Oriental, right here on 60th Street. And right after she came out, Jimmy Fallon came out, who was in the movie with her. And so he said, what's going on out here? We said, well, we're shooting a commercial for voting with Queen Latifah. We said, you want to do one? He said, sure, I'll do one. We shot a commercial with him right there on the spot. So we did Division of Elections. We had Consumer Affairs. We licensed 80 professionals, all professionals except lawyers, and we had the Bureau of Security, so we did securities enforcement. We also had Division on Civil Rights. We did civil rights enforcement. I'll come back to that in a second. We had Homeland Security, so we coordinated all of the Homeland Security work for the state of New Jersey. So, for example, when the Republican National Convention was held in New York, we were the ones that did a lot of the coordination for the exit route for the president and other people who were in Madison Square Garden. We also did the infrastructure protection planning with respect to the critical infrastructure. For example, New York gets its food actually out of New Jersey warehouses. So if somebody were to detonate a device at the George Washington Bridge and the Lincoln Tunnel and the Holland Tunnel, you know, you're going to run out of food in about 2 days. So we had to be mindful of how to protect that critical infrastructure. We brought in people from the private sector because we had to do infrastructure protection because most of the critical infrastructure is owned by private individuals. Chemical plants, gasoline plants, cybersecurity, all of this. We also had under our house, among other things, all of the civil lawyers. So all the lawsuits filed against the state of New Jersey. At any given time, there were 70,000 lawsuits pending. We also had Division of Criminal Justice, which had statewide prosecutorial authority. So we could prosecute any crime occurring in the state. And secondly, in addition to that, we also had supervision over the county prosecutors, not like New York. In New York and most states, county prosecutors are DAs. They're separately elected, as is the Attorney General. New Jersey follows the federal model. So just as the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, oversees the United States attorneys, we oversee the county prosecutors. We can supersede them in any case. We can take cases away from them. The county prosecutors oversee the police. They can supersede police chiefs with respect to their police power in a particular municipality. So it's strictly a pyramid structure of law enforcement. It makes for a lot of interesting work because you can do a lot of things. For example, civil rights. We went to a forum with people who were hearing impaired, and here's what we learned. They couldn't go to the movies. Well, they could go on one night. The movies would set aside one showing in the middle of the week at 7:30 for people who were deaf and hearing impaired. And so we wrote them a letter. We wrote all the movie theaters a letter and said, there's all this technology out here. You should make this available to deaf and hearing impaired people because a lot of children shouldn't have to wait. In those days, you had to wait about a year for the DVD to come out. Now the DVD may come out while the movie is still in the theater. And depending upon where you are, the DVD is on the train. So we said, no, we're not going to have two sets of people in this state, those who can see the movie and those who can't. So we invited them all in. Everybody agreed to put in the technology. And there were three kinds of technology. There was technology so that you got something like an iPad in a cup holder and the words came on the iPad so you could read it. Another kind had the words on the screen so that in the bottom of the screen, and a couple of theater owners said, well, nobody wants to watch that. I said, so don't buy a ticket to that particular showing. What's the big deal? We said, but you have to show these movies on the weekends. Well, what's wrong with the middle of the week? I said, have you heard of homework? You know, a lot of parents can't take their kids there because the kids are home doing homework. And so there was a similar one called also had a caption, and we said, you pick what technology you want, but you have to put it in. And you have to put it in theaters above this many screens, and you have to run these movies on the weekends, and you have to show on your website, and you have to show in the newspaper which showings have the icons to deal with hearing impaired technology. Then we found out that you actually can do technology for the blind. Did you know that? There are people who are sight impaired who actually can go to the movies. Now, before you think this is some miracle, think about a book on tape. So what they do is they have the same kind of narration in a headphone. And so if you set the scene so that they can visualize it in their head, they can hear the dialogue. And so they can go to the movies. AMC Theater said, well, we have this technology, we'll put it in. We said, that's great, thank you. One theater owner said, well, we're not going to do it. I said, okay, we're going to sue you. He said, well, come on. He said, you don't tell me anything about the hearing impaired. My daughter is deaf. I said, and what has that got to do with everybody else in New Jersey? Well, he got into this test of wills, and of course, that's always a bad decision with people who can sue you and people with law enforcement authority like the Attorney General, which is what we did. And we settled it just before we left office. We did the same thing with hospitals. We wrote hospitals. And we wrote hospitals and said, look, people come to the emergency room. And you know what happens when there are those who you don't know their language or they really don't hear you. We just talk louder to them. We don't really try to engage with them in a meaningful way to make sure they understand us. And so what we told the hospitals is you need technology on the screen with interpreters, and you need a list of interpreters in your county so that when someone comes to the hospital and maybe the child can hear, but the parent cannot. Maybe the parent, maybe both are deaf. And you have to be able to communicate with them in some meaningful way. You need TTY technology. You also need video technology. And you also need someone who can come to the hospital and engage. Hospitals did it, put it in emergency rooms. And so now that kind of capability exists in trauma centers around New Jersey. My point to you is this is a tremendous opportunity when you go into AG's offices to do some really positive work. We brought a suit against Nissan. Why? Nissan had in certain Altimas, and they had also in another of their sedans, they had a power pack that could be stolen, and you could take the power pack out and use it as a stun gun. And so thieves who found out about it were stealing the headlights, taking the power pack and using it as a stun gun. And so imagine what would happen if people came out of the basketball game in the Meadowlands and they come out and both their headlights are gone. And it's 10:30 at night. Well, they can't drive that car. And so they're literally stranded there. Nissan knew about it and told their dealers, only replace this. It was in the Maxima. Only replace this if the customer asked for it, because they didn't want to do a recall and they didn't want to fix it. See, those are the kinds of actions that if you pay attention to the work of the office, you can actually fix. And here's why. Most of the people you know and the people you will become have access to government. You can call somebody who knows somebody. But the people we're trying to serve in the Attorney General's office don't have access to government. They call and get a recording, and nobody ever calls them back. And so you have to find a way to make government work. What happens in a lot of these state capitals is they fight over the bureaucracy. Who's going to control it? Who's going to populate it? Nobody ever sits down and reads the authorizing legislation that created it to say, what is this thing supposed to do? And how do we make it go at 90 miles an hour so that we can serve as many people as we can as fast as we can for the limited time we have? Because you don't have a lot of time. You're going to be in and out pretty fast. As is often said, there's a group called SAGE, former AGs, and as the group says, you know, you're going to be a former AG a lot longer than you ever were AG. I don't care how long your run is. And so you better keep in mind from the day you start, you have to have a list there of the things you want to do. There are 3 things that happen in government, 3 things that must be done in government, 2 of which you don't have much room for. One is government just has to run. So you have to do all the things that government is required to do. The second thing is you have to deal with emergencies, fires, storms, explosions, shootings. The third thing is that interesting area of creativity where you say, what is it that we can do that's interesting? In consumer enforcement, in law enforcement policy, one of the things that Marcus brought to our attention and that we implemented was in the world of Homeland Security, New Jersey had no way to identify somebody instantaneously. If they stopped you on the side of the road and they couldn't ID you, there was no way to find out who you were until we we obtained and put into sheriff's offices, because they're open 24/7, live scan technology that would scan your fingerprints and we would know right away who you were. But up until that point, you wouldn't know. And here's why it matters. Before 9/11 happened, there was a Maryland state trooper who actually stopped one of the bombers in Maryland on the road for speeding, but didn't know who he was. Imagine if that kind of technology was available where he could say, come here, buddy, let's go to the station. We'll find out who you are. Who knows what would have happened? The point is that in an emerging world of technology usage, you have to make sure law enforcement develops. So let me just give you a quick overview, because I know we are somewhat limited in time and I want to actually keep us all on time, and I want to have time for some Q&A. I'll give you in 2 minutes my career, my life, to show you how accidental it all is, and it really is accidental. I grew up in Tuskegee, Alabama. I actually was born in the Bronx because my mother refused to have any of her children have on their birth certificate the name of George Wallace. So while we lived in Tuskegee, she was pursuing her graduate degree here in New York. So I grew up in Tuskegee, a town of 12,500 people, home of then Tuskegee Institute, now Tuskegee University, and it had the 3rd largest veterans hospital in the country. Why? Because after World War II and the Korean conflict, and even Vietnam for a part of the time, black soldiers could not go to certain VA hospitals in certain states because they were segregated. So they all came to Tuskegee. Okay, so Tuskegee had the 3rd largest VA hospital complex, which meant doctors, nurses, technicians, other kinds of professionals, golf courses, baseball diamonds, all kinds of things. And if you will read in your law studies a case, Gamillion versus Lightfoot. It's a case about voter gerrymandering. And the reason voter gerrymandering is important is every 10 years they take the census. Okay, they do that for a couple of reasons, one of which is to figure out apportionment between states. They also do it to figure out how much money a state is going to get based upon population, but the real political reason why they do it is they draw the lines again for congressional districts. And certain political operatives have been very smart about this. They have taken control of state houses so that they can control the legislature that draws the political lines. So when you see in Congress what they tell you are safe congressional districts, they mean that the legislature in that state has drawn that district so that nobody who doesn't think exactly like that guy, or even more in one direction, is ever going to win that seat. So in Tuskegee, they had a very odd political map. It included all the whites in the city and excluded all the blacks. And Dr. Gamillion, who was a professor at Tuskegee, challenged it, won in the Supreme Court, and that became the seminal case of racial gerrymandering, Gamillion versus Lightfoot. That came out of my town. And so when I saw all of this civil rights activity happening in Tuskegee, I said, boy, being a lawyer is something special. You can put your finger in the ground and turn the whole world around. You know, one highly motivated lawyer can sit at a kitchen table and create a lot of trouble. You can fix stuff. And so I was excited about that. Plus, I wasn't too good in math. I thought about, there was one time when I actually was good in math, and I got to algebra. I didn't understand algebra until I got to college and took logic. And I said, algebra is nothing more than logic. My professor said, exactly. I said, well, I wish they had told me this in 9th and 10th grade. So, and I thought about being an architect because I love architecture, I love design, and I went, I was in San Francisco recently, and I went to the De Young Museum, and I saw all of the work of Oscar de la Renta. Unbelievable. To have a person that creative over 4 decades, stunning. Well, I digress. So the idea was, for me, so I left Tuskegee, I went to Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. And it was some of the best 4 years of my life. I met there the person who wrote the seminal work in African American history. It's called The Negro in the Making of America, Dr. Benjamin Quarles. And I remember once in a forum much like this in the Student Center, brother stands up, challenging, and I love this because it's expectation, and this always happens, by the way. As you raise the hope and expectation and vision of the community, sometimes they kick you because it is not happening as quickly as everybody anticipated. But system reform always takes a little bit of time. Brother stands up. Well, I want to know, how come we discontinued the department of this? We aren't teaching these courses. Now I want to know what Morgan's going to do about it. Dr. Quarles sat on the stage, had to be in his 70s at the time, and he said, young man, let me share something with you. Right across that bridge is a library. In it, we have special collections, and we have every book on every topic for anything you wish to know about the earth or anybody on it. He said, all you need do is go there, get whatever book you wish, and read it. And you will learn whatever you wish. He said, the goal of Morgan State University is not to spoon feed you knowledge. The goal is to inspire your imagination and to motivate you and to give you the skills necessary to go and learn whatever you wish to learn so that you can do something productive in life. He shut the whole game down because he was right. That's an unimpeachable truth. Our ability to grow and learn is based upon our own effort. So I came to Columbia Law School from Morgan. From there, I was a law clerk to a U.S. District Court judge, as was Marcus. Judge Dickinson Debevoise in New Jersey. I spent a year as a law clerk for him, and then I came here to Manhattan to a law firm on Park Avenue. I was at Case, Scholler, Fearman, Hayes, and Handler. I did labor law, antitrust, commercial litigation, but I was a young lawyer, so you get assignments and you try to do them. You pull a couple of all-nighters, and you don't complain about it because you're learning. And this is part of what it takes to learn. You put the time in that's required to learn, which I did. I left there and went to the United States Attorney's Office in New Jersey, where I prosecuted cases involving organized crime, bank robbery, credit card fraud, kiddie porn, and other kinds of federal crimes. I left there and went to the AG's office the first time. That time, we had an Attorney General serving for 1 year in the last year of the Tom Kean administration. This was year 8. New Jersey governors get 2 terms, term limited, and then they're out, 2 4-year terms. And I was asked to work on the assault weapons legislation, and I did. New Jersey was the second state in the union to ban semi-automatic assault weapons. California was the first, except here's what California did. California passed the legislation and said it won't take effect for a year. So what do you think people did in that year? There was a bum rush on Western Union. Give me 15 Uzis and I'll take about another 9 Tech 9s. And they went home and they basically hoarded them. And they waited for so that's what happened. New Jersey, we said, nope. If you have them, you have to render them permanently inoperable, or you have to sell them, or you can take them out of state, but they can't be in the state. And we fought the gun lobby. We beat them. It was passed, not in the Kean administration, but the next one, Jim Florio's administration. And it ultimately, I wrote probably 85% of the law, and it resulted in the Governor Florio some years later getting a profiles in courage at Kennedy School. So whenever we see each other, he winks at me, and I tell him, hey, you earned it. You know, he pushed it through the legislature. And then I went back to private practice, and of course, you know how I got back to the AG's office. But that was my career, and it didn't happen because I planned it. When I tell you it's purely accident, I've got no business being in the state of New Jersey. I have no family there. I visited New Jersey twice in my life. But I got a job there, and it just worked out. And that will happen to you. You will get a job somewhere, you'll become interested in some subject matter, or you'll become interested in a place, and someone will invite you. Marcus and I are working with a guy who's the former Attorney General in Oklahoma. And he always gives us a word of wisdom, and he said something. I was sitting in a parking lot on a conference call, and I was debating whether or not to go to a particular meeting. And he didn't know this. But in closing out this particular call, he said, here's my word of wisdom, just go. I said, say that again, Mike. He said, just go. Someone said, go where? He said, go to anything. Just go. And I said, you know something, you just helped me figure something out. I was debating whether or not I was going to go to this particular meeting. And you talked me into it by that statement. And sure enough, I went, and it was magnificent. My point is, just go. You have to build these relationships. You have to grow, you have to learn, build the relationships. You are to be commended for coming here, because you could have been anywhere you wanted to be on a Friday afternoon. You could have said, I'm not going to that. What am I going to do there? But somewhere in your life, what you've learned here will factor into how you are perceiving a particular moment, learning something about that particular moment, developing yourself, because you came here and it gave you a new approach, some new ideas, and some new thoughts about how to do it. I urge you to continue learning. Find out what your best self is. Because had I studied like I did in law school and college, and I did come out cum laude, but I could have come out summa cum laude, or at least magna, had I studied like I did in law school. If I studied in law school like I did for the bar, I would have been a completely different student. So my point is that put in the effort in the time. Organize yourself. You know, from Sunday to Thursday, get it done. Spend a little bit of time on, you know, you'll have time to do the other things you're interested in doing. But Sunday to Thursday, get it done. Because you're going to be measured on your record. Grades don't measure intelligence. They do measure discipline, though. They measure who actually studied their lesson versus who didn't. Because you do not want to be that person doing the temp job and knowing that you could have been better and could have been in a different position. You know, C students get that kind of opportunity. B students get that kind of opportunity. A students get that kind of opportunity. And so it's continuous improvement, continuous growth. But that doesn't mean that the race goes to the swift. It doesn't. It goes to those who endure. So you have to be in a continuous process of improvement, of learning and growing. And if that's where you are, you're going to be just fine, as long as you just go. Don't talk yourself out of it. Don't talk yourself out of growing. Don't talk yourself out of being friends with different people. I'll give you some advice my dad gave me. It's more of a caution than anything else. I didn't understand it at the time. I've come to realize what he meant now. Stay green and you'll continue to grow. Because once you ripen, you'll certainly begin to rot. And so you had better keep learning and growing and thinking and developing yourself. Because when you think you have figured it all out and you've arrived and you've made it, and when you become so inwardly focused, you think you're owed, rather than outwardly focused where you are paying attention to serving others and helping others and advancing society, you've lost. Thank you for your time. You may have a question or two. If you do, I'm happy to answer it. Don't be shy. You're among friends. There's no such thing as a bad question, too. Yes. What do I do now? I practice law at Patterson, Belknap, Webb, and Tyler. We're over on 6th Avenue and 44. And I do commercial litigation. I do internal investigations. And occasionally I get invited into projects like the Newark Police Department. Yes.
Why didn't you try to become something like a politician?
I think the question was, why didn't I pursue politics after the AG's life? You know, it's not a life for me. And that is not to criticize people who pursue that life, because we need good people in public life. And I help a lot of people who are running for office, whether it's to be AG or to be governor or to be U.S. senator. And I don't do it because I expect one day to get in and get something. I do it because I like them, and I think they're going to do, I think they really are committed to the work. For me, it's not a life I would prefer, because I think it is it's an unpleasant existence. I mean, think about all the money you have to raise. And don't kid yourself. People who give you big money do have expectations. And there's nothing more dangerous than an ambitious politician who's broke. Nothing more dangerous. Because, you know, you get money from people who expect to help you shape your policy. And they never tell you, I need you to do this. What they tell you is something like this. I'll put it in a real world context. Yes, this is the way to put it. Let me put it in this context for you. You're the district attorney of a particular city. You have a very politically powerful mayor in that city. There's been a young man who's been shot in that city, and you know it's on videotape. You've seen the videotape. There's an election coming up. And the powers of the city persuade you not to indict the case, and they persuade you not to release the videotape prior to the election, because it's going to get unpleasant for somebody. And so now you have a decision point. And that's when you have to ask yourself, why did I decide to become a lawyer? Why did I seek this job? Who am I? It may have a cost, but you better define yourself. You better have defined yourself before you got to that point, because then it becomes real easy. Because here's the syrupy, sweet dialogue you get from a powerful mayor. Hey, you know, the president's going to be in town this weekend with the First Lady. We're going to have a couple of people over for drinks. Why don't you stop by? Long before this happens, Mr. President, let me introduce you to our up-and-coming rising star here, the district attorney. Boop. Maybe the politically powerful mayor also has friends in entertainment. Oh, you know, Clooney's going to be in town with his wife. You know, she's a big civil rights lawyer. Why don't you come by? I think you all would hit it off. Very small dinner party. Sure, I'd love to be there. Let us introduce you to our up-and-coming DA. We have very high hopes for her or him in this city. And so when they say, you know what, I don't think that tape ought to get out before the election. And, you know, I don't know if we need to take any action just yet. Maybe you make a different decision versus saying, well, I told the people, I didn't sell the people a dream. I sold them certainty. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put that case in the grand jury for the purpose of obtaining an indictment. And I'm going to announce this indictment, and that tape is coming out in public. And let it work out the way it works out. You're going to make a lot of people mad. I'm sorry. This is the oath I took. This is the job I do. One of those paths, whether or not it keeps you in office, one of those paths you're going to have to decide to take. And the other thing is, who wants to sit in a call room on an afternoon like this with a whole list with an assistant sitting next to you going phone number by phone number? Well, let's call Markus Green. Let's call Jeremy next. And I'll tell you how bad it gets. I was standing next to a guy in a city who's a city councilman who's running for mayor. I run into him at an event, and I connect because I happen to know the college he went to and some people who went there. I say hello to him, you know, hi, boom, boom, boom. We talk just briefly, but he's cold. You know, he's not engaging. And so I don't press it. And I don't tell him what my connection is to the people who are sponsoring the event for which he's a guest, because it's unimportant. I'm trying to figure out who this guy is because somebody says he wants to be somebody. So lo and behold, in my office one day, I get a phone call. Peter, this is so-and-so, bruh, we're in the same fraternity. Bruh, I'm looking forward to seeing you. I'm doing an event in New York. Hope you can come and support it. Hope you can come and you know, give me some support. You know, I'm going to do big things in this town, and I really, really need your help. Click. He doesn't even realize I'm the same guy. That's the problem. That's the political life. 7 events a day, every breakfast, and you better not miss one. Because you miss one, somebody's going to say, you know, you didn't come to our lunch, but we heard you went to theirs. What, we don't matter like they matter? I don't want that life. For some people, it's, you know, it's how they do. And it's, believe me, it's not a criticism. It's just a choice I've made about my own life. For people who want to do that, God bless you. I hope you get in, and I hope you really work it out, and I hope you stay strong. But it's not a life I want. I like, you know, being a private lawyer, going where I want to go, doing cases I want to do, and not spending I don't want friends to like saying, do this. Oh, Peter's calling. You know, he wants money. I want people to, we call it support, but I want people to take my call because I'm calling and say, hey, how you doing? I stop in on people all the time in Washington, and I'd say, I'm the easiest meeting you got today. I don't want a thing. I just came to say hello and give you a hug. How you doing? That's me.
Hi, I'm just curious, what's your biggest adversity in your career and how did you overcome it?
Biggest adversity? Wow, biggest adversity. You know what what is a challenge is, it's not the biggest adversity, it's you're constantly reproving yourself. And it's particularly true for people of color. You're always on an audition. You're always trying to, no matter what you've accomplished, no matter what you think you've accomplished or what you've done, somebody, you know, there's an old saying, I'm going to I'll share it with you because I want to put this in a context. Remember, I grew up in the 60s and the 70s in Alabama when people came right at you. This is a unique country in that we are trying to very hard have the descendants of slave owners and the descendants of slaves live together in harmony and respect one another on an equal plane and truly be equal. Now think about what you have to have in order to have slavery. You need every institution of the country to support it and to justify it. You need religion to back it up. So you need some misinterpretation of religious doctrine to say it's okay. You also need social institutions, educational institutions to back it up. You need law enforcement institutions to enforce it. Sorry, son, you can't drink from that fountain. You can't sit there. Why not? Because we say you can't, and we control the game. Oh, I'd like to vote. You can't vote. What do you, get out of here. You're not going to vote. Particularly in states like Mississippi, where in the aftermath of slavery, the majority of the state was African American. You can't, just as a matter of power, you can't give everybody the vote. You're out. So there was a story that there was a caution when I was a kid that a guy told me once. And so here's the story. So a guy is working for an ice company. And he has customers who never meet the owner. They know him. He delivers ice. Ice is terrific. house to house, business to business. After about 15 years, he says, you know what? I'm tired of working for this guy. I want my own business. And so he starts his own business. Gets the ice from the same distributor, and he goes house to house, except he can't get the same customers. They won't buy ice from him. And he goes to all the people, hey, you've known me 15 years. Tommy, I'm sorry. And he's sitting in a bar one day, and he's telling the bartender, he said, Tommy, why you look so down? He says, I've dealt with these people for 15 years. Our families know each other. They gave me gifts at Christmas, and I don't understand. They won't do business with me. Bartender pours him a drink, puts it out there, and said, Tommy, don't you know that a white man's ice is colder? The point of the matter is, that's what bigotry and racism does to you. That's what it does. There are people who actually think ice is colder because it comes from A instead of B. As if God sat on high and doled out brains like this. No, more to them, less to them, a little bit more to them. It's irrational. Because racism and bigotry is irrational, and all of us have to unlearn it. There are a bunch of kind of subtle messages we send and give to one another, and you have to, on a constant basis, push that out of your mind so you can focus on work and building a team that's based on people who care about humanity equally. In terms of a challenge, that's a challenge. It's a challenge in the nation. And you see it playing out in gender. You know, and we can fight over degrees all day long. I stopped fighting over degrees. I'm against the thinking that produces that behavior and that thought process. When people say, I can't believe he said that, I say, I can't believe he thought it. When you see these clowns running around now, I mean, I think, which is a great benefit of some of the candidates now, that they're drawing this out. We need a public discussion of this ugliness. It has to be killed sooner or later. Think about where this nation would be if Reconstruction actually worked. You think Colin Powell is the first guy like him? No. There have been 30 people like him. They just didn't get the shot. That's all it is. So that's a challenge. But I don't want you to feel daunted by that. And don't use it as a reason why you don't do your best. Because I want to tell you, the world isn't fair to anybody. Anybody. And so get in there. Mix it up. Be your best self. It's kind of like when you wash your dishes. You don't do that to go tell the neighbors, say, come in and look at those dishes. Some good dishes right there. That isn't why you do it. You do it because it needs doing and because you have pride in the work that you do. A good job is its own reward, even if nobody sees it. And God help you if you're doing it so you can stand on top of the mountain saying, look at me. And there are enough people out there who do that. Look at me. Ain't I great? An inward focus. You have to remind yourself of it. It's about serving others. People need help. People are getting run over. And it's up to all of us who go into public service to figure out how we fix things, and they don't even know that we're the ones who fixed it. And it doesn't matter. What matters is that the thing got fixed, and you do systemic reform so it gets better. What I'm looking forward to in Newark is I can't measure in one day how many people won't get shot once they do better. But I know some people won't get shot and some people won't get killed. That's a win. There's no way to measure it. There'll be some police officers who will approach their job in a very different way. And that's a win. It's hard, it's ugly, it's difficult. But that's why we study. That's why you came here. That's why on graduation day you stand proudly to say, I'm a John Jay graduate. And that's why you're going to go into the task doing your very best, your level best. Because people need you. And maybe you see something and nobody else sees. And don't be afraid of criticism. Don't be afraid of people who don't like you. You're always going to have people who just take a different point of view than you, and they don't like you. They don't like the people you're working with. They don't like your cause, and so what? As I used to tell some of these people in Trenton, guess what? When you wake up tomorrow morning, I'm still going to be the Attorney General. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to take a 3-minute coffee break, tea break, dessert break, and we're going to reconvene for the career panel. Welcome back. How do you follow that? The pressure is on this team, right? Many of whom are personal friends and professional colleagues of mine. I, too, am an alumna of the Attorney General's Office of New York State. So to follow General Harvey is almost impossible, Lynn and crew. So the bios of these amazing people and experts and practitioners, the bios are in the program, so feel free to review. Also, there is a summary of what is an Attorney General. And outside there are resources. So when you leave this room to go to our reception at the end of the program, please check out the registration table. There are resources, information about the Attorney General, books, peer review articles, etc., as well as postings for employment opportunities that our good friend Sandy is going to talk about. So without further ado, I want to turn the mic over to Lynn and this great team.
Thank you. I think I'm going to start by standing over here, and then I'll move back over here.
And please use the microphone.
Okay, let me start over here, and then I'll end up back there. First of all, wow, this is a tough act to follow. You now know that I am not Peter Harvey, because I'm shorter. Okay, so what we're going to try to do in this panel, I'm sitting with the people who actually are behind the Peter Harveys of the world. These are the people who do all the work, who oversee all the work, and who actually make it happen. Because believe it or not, you have to have a great leader, but you have to have a great leadership team. And this is an example of what a great leadership team can be and is, in fact. So what we're going to try to do today is have a conversation about what is the work, what jobs do these folks do in the Office of Attorney General, or did they do? What kind of skills do they have that you might listen to, have, or need to pick up, and kind of try to have a free-flowing conversation. I've asked them each to have a 10-minute statement, and then I have a bunch of leading questions. I'm going to also want you to ask questions and stop us. So we'll see if we can get this to all work. So first, just 2 words about me. I had a 27-year career with the Peter Harveys of the world at a place called NAAG, terrible acronym for a female, horrible. And it's the National Association of Attorneys General. I was the director for 7 years. I was the deputy and legislative director, which means I had to manage a staff of lawyers. I am a non-lawyer. So I was like herding sheep. I was on first-line responsibility for dealing with Capitol Hill. I then took out 4 years and left, and I was at the Clinton administration with the president of the university. But also Bill Clinton, by the way, was a former state attorney general. And one of the youngest attorneys general elected at age 28. Probably one of those people who was thinking about higher office at the time, and little did we know. Okay, so the first person I'm going to introduce you all, sit down, let you do your 10 minutes, and then we'll have a conversation. First is Jason Brown. I'm going to let you read about his many qualifications in his bio. I'm going to skip where everybody went to school. To suffice it to say, they all went to school. They all graduated. They're all stellar. But a couple of words about Jason. He's the Chief Deputy Attorney General, who's probably, in theory, in most offices, the alter ego of the Attorney General. The person probably in New York may or may have its own particularities, but generally viewed as the top person in the office, the person in the office who says no to the Attorney General. This isn't going to work. You do this, you're doing it at your peril. Jason's got a great background that's been in the public sector, in the U.S. Attorney's Office. The Chief Deputy is what we would say is a real lawyer, which is sometimes not what people say about lawyers who do policy work. He's a real lawyer. He's been a prosecutor. He's practiced in the private sector, and he's got a vast array of substantive knowledge, and he's newly back in the office and is probably still trying to figure it out. And one of the questions that somebody should ask him is, why did he come back? Why did he come back? Why did he lose 3 zeros? 3 zeros or 2 or 1 from your salary? We won't talk about that. We won't talk about that. So he's going to speak first. Second one is Sandy GRANNUM. Has a fantastic background. She's done everything. You really have. You've done everything. Law school, law clerk, healthcare bureau, substantive knowledge of healthcare as well as many other things, private practice at the same firm with a beloved former Attorney General, Bob Abrams, here in New York. And the list just kind of goes on and on. She has a very interesting job as chief of the Legal Recruitment Bureau. She's the person who you probably most want to know on this entire panel. But I know she's going to have a lot of really good career tips. DOMINICK, ZARRELLA, Director of Investigations, I'm meeting for the first time. I love your background. Former NYPD cop service. Any of you interested in criminal law and law enforcement are going to want to talk to him because he's actually been there, seen it, been there. I'm a huge Law and Order fan. You've never been in it, I hope. But I bet some of your stories and cases were. So DOMINICK is chief of the investigations unit. He's going to talk about all of that. What's entailed. He is here today bringing one of his investigators, Bradley Ruddy, who this is a great career path that some of you may just not really think of when you're thinking about what makes an AG office tick. And I saved my own hire. Angelita PLEMMER was my communications director at NAAG. And I have to tell you, why did I hire her? She's the only person who told me the truth. The scenario was, at the end, I was doing a group interview, and it was going to be my decision, but I had 5 public information officers in the various states come in because I didn't want to make a mistake if half of the country could not work with the person I was about to hire. I would be doomed. I was a new executive director, and this position was considered very controversial. So my scenario question at the end was, Angelita, You know, I'm a person who, I'm a person, which is true, who has an idea a minute, discard about half of them, but I'm always seeing new ways of doing things, new ideas, etc. I said, against that backdrop, I come into your office one day and I say, have I got an idea for you? I thought of it when I was running this morning. It's really good. And I said, so what do you think about this? Okay, most of you in an interview situation, you might see this as a make or break question. Do I lie? It's really a terrible idea she has. And I made up an idea that was a terrible idea. And I turned to Angelita and I said, how do you respond to me? Is it a good idea? No. I said, why isn't it a good idea? And then I listened to the person I was about to hire explain why it wasn't a good idea. She was absolutely right. She was the only person who would tell me the truth. That's the lesson. So, as we start here, I just have one question for you all. These people all work 24/7. By the way, Angelita heads the public information function for the court system in Maryland. Here is my question. Just sort of go down the road. What do you do when you're not working? Quick.
Okay. I'm a mom, so that's what I do. I have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old, so I'm a mom and a wife, and I'm a part-time graduate student. That's what I do in my free time.
Okay, that's 3 jobs.
3 jobs.
Okay.
All right, so I'm a wife and a mom, but my son. Oh, so you want her to repeat?
No.
Okay.
I'm loud,
All right.
so I'm sure they heard.
Okay, so I'm a wife and a mom, but my son is actually a student here at John Jay. So he can handle and take care of himself. So I try to have fun.
Yes.
We travel, we go to theaters, we go out to dinner. So I try to have fun. Love movies, love cooking, love entertainment.
Great. Message. She has a life. Next. Jason.
I think it's obvious to look at me. I am a master swimmer.
Yes.
You have to do 2 things to qualify as a master swimmer. You have to be over 18 years of age, and your $45 check to the United States Masters Swimming Association must clear. And I've done both of those things for many years now, so that's my primary activity when I'm not working.
That's fabulous. That is just fabulous because I'm a swimmer who couldn't be talked into masters. Next.
I'm recently an empty nester, for those of you who knows what that means, and I find myself spending a lot of time talking to my dogs about the things that
And you know, I'm going to ask you that too.
Well, I'm only 28, so I still have a life too.
What is that?
What did he
Okay, that's good. All right, so now let's turn. We'll go in this order. Jason, you go first. Sandy, you're next. You're next. And then Angelita, you're next. 10 minutes each, and then we'll turn to questions and conversation. And you can talk from here, or if you want to stand.
You know, can folks, if I'm sitting, it's not that big a room. Can folks hear me? Yes? You're filming. Is the mic picking this up, or does it have to be? I'm always worried about deafening people as well. Well, I tell you what, I'm not going to talk for 10 minutes, but maybe just to make it easier for microphone purposes, I'll speak from here. I was born and raised in Tuskegee, Alabama. Peter, I guess Peter stepped out, but that's just lousy that we have to go after. It's terrible. I mean, I'm from the Upper West Side of Manhattan. It doesn't make for a very compelling life story. You know, I was from the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I went to these Ivy League schools, and here I am. You know, it doesn't have quite the same zing to it that Peter's narrative does, and Peter's quite a speaker as well. So that's just a horrible act for us to follow. But and if I told Peter right after after he was done that I don't care whether he wants to run for public office or not. He owes it to us to do so, because I think it's a shame. It's exactly. He's exactly the sort of person that politics drives away, the person who really would be wonderful and just is too rational to want to go through the process. So it's just a shame. Just very quickly about sort of my background that brought me here. In terms of my legal career, I have sort of ping-ponged back and forth between government and private practice. And if you have the luxury to be able to do that, it makes for really a great career. if only for one of the reasons that Peter mentioned, which is that you don't get bored. You're always sort of looking forward to doing something different, and it just creates such a wide variety of opportunities. And it allows you to understand both sides, which as a lawyer, even if you're in criminal justice, whatever you're in, basically, you have to be able to understand the person that you're talking to. You know, too many conversations, and obviously you see it at the national political level these days, like this, you know, conversations just going completely past each other. There's no exchange of information, there's no exchange of ideas. So I think in addition to sort of the basic notion of seizing the day, seizing the opportunities that are presented to you, which is one of the themes that Marcus and Peter touched on so eloquently before, I think the notion of having a career where you have different positions at different times so that you understand much better how the other thinks, right? Rather than just sort of objectifying the other person as, well, that person's just crazy, that person's stupid, that person just is irrational. Our conversations go so much farther when we have a basis for a dialogue. And I hope at least, in terms of my current job that I've held now for all of 3 months, so it's still fairly early in the process, and I go to Dom and Sandy all the time for guidance as to what I should be doing. Bradley, I'll be coming to you pretty soon, I think. You know, one of the things I think that I bring to the job, and I think one of the reasons that I was asked by Attorney General Schneiderman to take this position is because I had been in private practice for many years before joining the office. I have some understanding of how corporations think, how individual defendants think, how the people on the other side of our cases might approach a problem, so that lawyers that we're dealing with in the office on the other side of the fence know that when they talk to somebody like me, they're getting a fair hearing, which is an extremely important part of the process. So we can talk more about our backgrounds as we go through it, but I think that's the basic thing that I would encourage you all to do where possible. Don't say no to a job because you think this isn't sort of exactly your sweet spot. Be a little adventurous.
So good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure and a delight to be here. Thank you for having me. You read my bio and you go, boy, the girl can't keep a job, can she? Well, I've been very blessed in my career. I became an attorney and was able to become a litigator and work with judges and attorneys and in firms and in offices and to be able to do great things. And then I got the opportunity to shift, because one of the things I've always loved doing is talking to people about their lives. And even when before I became an attorney, I was developing a program of mentorship and talking to high school and college students about their careers. And when I was in law school and when I became an attorney, I did that. So it seems that my life as an attorney has led me to this moment to be head of legal recruitment at the Attorney General's office, because I talk to people every day about their careers and about the opportunities that are available to them once they have a law degree. You can practice law, and I can talk to you about being a litigator. I can talk to you about being in a big firm or working for the government or being in a corporation or being in a small firm or being in-house at a hospital, because I had the privilege of doing all of those things. And so I like to think, wow, I am a resource. And so when I talk to people about what's possible in their lives as an attorney, I can speak from true experience. So what do I do now? Well, I started in the AG's office as the deputy of the Healthcare Bureau under the administration under Elliot Spitzer, and that's when I got to know Mindy Bachstein. It was a pleasure. So I was deputy there doing litigation, fighting the fight for the people of New York against unlicensed health plans, irreparable physicians, and pharmaceutical companies, and loved it. But that was toward the end of my I had been litigating for over 20 years, and I said, I'm really ready for a change. So when then Attorney General Cuomo came in, I said, can I do this? Can I be head of your Legal Recruitment Bureau? And he said yes. And as I like to say, Eric Schneiderman, in his great wisdom, has allowed me to continue in this role. So that's what I do. I talk to college students, law students, and attorneys about their careers and their dreams and how they can make them happen at our office, because we have a great office. There are great opportunities there. For a young attorney, you know, we want people to have some experience before they come to us, but to come to an office where you can stand up to a Pfizer or an Aventis or JP Morgan Chase and say, no, you can't do that. You are violating the law. You are hurting the people of the state of New York and maybe elsewhere, and we are going to stop you. And that's what you can do in our office. And that's what the great power of the Attorney General's office is. And so now I get to help find the attorneys and the law students who help power that engine to make that work happen. Not only do I help with the attorneys and law students, I run the summer program for the law students, and we also help to bring the other professionals in the office. So, you know, we have economists, we have researchers, data scientists, people who are involved in the environment, policymakers. So I have the privilege of helping to bring them into the office too. So that's what I do, and I love it, and I love talking to people about it, and I look forward to this further conversation.
Good afternoon. I'm Dom ZARRELLA, and unlike Peter and Jason, I was not born in Tuskegee, Alabama, and I probably can't spell Tuskegee. This is my 36th year in law enforcement. 12 years ago, I was supposed to be sitting on a porch in Florida after I finished my NYPD career. That was the goal. But once you get into law enforcement and you see the potential to do things and to do different things and to learn different things, like Mr. Harvey had mentioned, what you can learn, what you can do. And then you get the opportunity to come to a different agency, like the Attorney General's office. 12 years ago, I was given that opportunity, and I started as a supervising investigator. Never thought I would wind up in the position that I am today. Still trying to figure out how I wound up in the position, but it's a challenge. And everything in law enforcement is a challenge. And the opportunities exist, but you have to work to find them. And then you have to work to figure out what skill set you need for the different opportunities. Law enforcement is an entirely different, changed entity these days. Back in the day, when I first started, technology wasn't really such an important thing. Nobody was walking around with cell phones. Nobody was walking around with tablets. Now, whether it's a white-collar investigation, a criminal investigation, a civil-type investigation, everybody's into technology, GPS. These are the things that are constantly evolving, and it's one of the biggest challenges as you go about this career, is to stay on top of what's out there, to stay on top of the changers in the field, to figure out what it is that you want to do, and follow that path. That's the way I've always approached it. You know, it changes every day. The Attorney General's office is a unique, very unique place. The attorneys, the investigators, analysts, the auditors, it works hand in hand as a team. Everybody's got a job and everybody has a role to do, and it's a big team effort. We are in so many different areas, like Sandy said, like Jason said. We do criminal work, we do civil work, we do healthcare, we do Medicaid fraud. There's just so many different things, and each different area at times requires different skills, different type of knowledge, but it's there. I always look to stay one step ahead of the game. That's the way I approach it, where if I see something or if I think that, okay, this is going to be the way of the future, I'll have a conversation with my attorney counterparts, and we're always developing training, and we're always sending up people for training. But even if you go to college, you graduate, you go to a law academy and you graduate, every day something changes, and in order to be successful, you just have to keep following the changes and you just have to stick to it. Anybody can do it if you put your mind to it. But that's the way I've approached it. That's the way the Attorney General's office goes about it. And you'll be surprised if you talk to people who've been in the law enforcement field for a long time, they'll be able to tell you some of the best cases that they've ever worked on. But they'll also have just as many stories about the people that they've helped along the way, or the little things that didn't mean anything at that time, but now when you look back on it, geez, you know what? We really helped that person. And the type of work that we do in the AG's office, whether it's a big settlement with large companies that take advantage of people, whether it's people abusing the Medicaid fraud, it's all stuff that plays into the lives of everyday people. So it's there. You just have to figure out where you want to go, and then you just figure out how to get there. But once you decide, just stick with it and just stay on top of what changes. And like Peter said, books, knowledge, it's a very powerful thing. And that's it.
Can we take a minute here and also ask Bradley to come up and say, so why'd you do it? You're closer to their age than our age. Why'd you do it? I know I'm probably putting you on the spot, so go.
Well, I just want to tell everybody I was not prepared for this. I got to the office at 9 this morning, and Chief saw me in the hallway and said, "You're in today?" "Yes, sir." "You're with me today." So here I am. I'm totally not prepared for this, but why I did it, I always admired law, and I've worked as a paralegal for years. I applied for the AG's office as an analyst. Now, I did not know the amount of positions that's at the AG's office. I had no idea. But I realized with my paralegal background, being an analyst is real easy for me. So I became an analyst. I had no background in anything criminal. I've done workers' comp, real estate, everything besides criminal. So when I got to the 22nd floor for my interview, I saw a criminal, and I was like, oh, I'm not getting this job. But thank God the deputy saw that I had more to offer, and she gave me the position. When I was an analyst, I wanted to go to law school. I took the LSAT, but I didn't do very well, and I wanted to see other career paths. And luckily, my chief offered me the position to become a police officer. So I became a police officer after going through the academy, and it's the same type of position. And me having the analyst job, I know both sides, and I'm able to do my analyst work and sometimes do what the analyst is supposed to do and get the eye rolls sometimes, but I'm just used to doing my job. And the investigation is what counts, so that's
pretty good for being unprepared. Okay, Angelita.
Hi, my name is Angelita Plemmer-Williams, and I am the only, I'm one of a few non-lawyers in the group, and I'm proud to be here. And I think it's great that this forum is occurring because there are so many careers within the Office of Attorney General. And quite frankly, when I was growing up, I had no idea about the opportunities that were here. My mom was a teacher. My father did human resources. And so this was not something that I was familiar with at all. In fact, I didn't really have a career path at all. I wish I had known about a John Jay when I was growing up, but I didn't have this. I actually just said, I like to read, I like to write, and I like to talk. I'm very social. And so that career path worked out for me. I became a journalist. And so I became a newspaper reporter for about 6-7 years. And I covered criminal justice issues along with other issues, government, civil rights. And it was a great opportunity for me to fine-tune those skills about storytelling, about telling a narrative. And so it's great to have these people that work here and to know about the work that happens in an Office of Attorney General. But if there's no one else that knows about it, if there's no one else that knows about the services they provide, then there's something that needs to happen so that the members of the public know who they are, what they do, and why it's important, what your taxpayer dollars are doing for you. And so I think that the position of communications director is really pivotal because, obviously attorneys general are elected or appointed And so they have a vested interest in having their stories told. And how you tell that narrative is so important. It really is. And I would say that not having a very clear career path for me has worked very well. Unlike Marcus says, oh, I always knew I wanted to be in law enforcement. I didn't know that. I just wanted to try different things. And so I tried journalism. And then I said, what else can I do? I have a master's in journalism from Columbia. Let me see what else I can do. And I ended up going into public relations and public affairs. And I started working in local governments, and I liked that. And I said, what else can I do? And then this job opportunity turned up at NAAG. One of the things that I learned about NAAG, which I thought was great, was Lynn mentioned that it's an opportunity for people to grow and move on to other things. The joke was that NAAG is called the National Association of Aspiring Governors. And so I had an opportunity to work with a large number of individuals who did have aspirations to move on to other things. And my interest was really in helping them and supporting them in those efforts. What can I do to help your narrative be told? And so I really enjoyed my time at NAAG. It was it was very inspiring. I got to meet people like Marcus and General Harvey, but also I got to learn the language that attorneys speak, and that was something, again, that was foreign to me. I learned about what happens in the courtroom. I learned about multi-state litigation. I learned about antitrust law. But I didn't have to go to law school to do that. My parents wanted me to go to law school, but I wanted something that was more creative. I needed a creative outlet, and writing and storytelling helped me to do that. And so whether it was through print medium and then eventually evolving into video and television kind of work, it was a great opportunity for me to mix the two, public policy and law and also communications. And it was a great opportunity, again, to be a part of something great where you're helping people, you're serving others, and at the same time, again, having that creative outlet. So I would encourage you that if you're not sure about what you want to do, that's okay. I think I've done okay. My mom and dad are proud of me. But more importantly, I like what I do. And I think that's probably the most important thing, is that the work that I do is important to people, and I see how it affects people every day. And I think if you can go home at the end of the day and say, I did something to help someone else, it's not just about me, it's about serving others. And I think you have really succeeded in life. And I think that's so important at the end of the day.
So while the panelists are going to think for a minute about one situation, one case, preferably something that we would be familiar with, and kind of how do you go about even addressing this issue? What kind of resources does it take for the office? That kind of question. I've got a question for you out there in the audience. I need a better understanding of what your majors are. And we touched on a little bit of that when the president was in the room. So how many people are criminal law majors? Just show of hands. Some area in criminal law. Okay. Criminal justice. I'm sorry, criminal justice I meant. Thank you. Okay, who's in science? All right, who's majoring in English? Thank you. Computers, technology, anything like that? Okay, that's an area that we all need to learn. What about political science? Okay, now inform me, what did I miss? Okay, who did I miss? Philosophy. Security management. Wait, I couldn't hear you. Accounting, auditing. I'm sorry? Law and society. Forensic psychology. Oh, I think an AG office could use all of you. Who did I miss back there?
Public administration.
Public administration, for sure. Economics, great. Did we cover everything now? Okay, all of those, there are positions that use those backgrounds, I think I am not mistaken, in one way or another in an attorney general's office. I also just want to take a minute. Who knows what an attorney general really is, other than now you think they're all like Peter Harvey? You worked in an AG office, right? And somebody else, who's worked in an AG office? Okay, I'm going to call on you in a minute. What's an attorney general anyway?
A prosecutor for the government. We prosecute the bad guys.
Okay, can you all hear that? Louder. Say that again.
Prosecutor for the government, so they go after mostly large corporations and anything that's affected a large amount of people in a negative way.
Okay, what do you think an attorney general is?
Oh, I also agree with her, but also I think they also help, like they listen to what the people's problems are, and they try to assist them in the best way possible.
Whoops, okay. And I think you're both right, and?
I would say kind of like an attorney who's at a much higher level, and what I guess part of their job or role is also to act as a mediator or liaison between different communities, help out with what they can do, but sometimes they also play a prosecutor role or press charges, I guess.
And all of you were right, and I would probably add to that, all of you were right, but in an overview, I would probably say that the Attorney General is the chief legal officer of the state. It's just a way to take all of these different professions and everything you said and kind of put it under a rubric. I would probably also say that there are a couple of different functions. Clearly, an important function in most states is representing the public interest. That is what they are talking about when they say, you know, we're fighting the bad guys. They're fighting the bad guys on behalf of whom? Not only the state, which is cheated out of money, but also for the citizens, because believe me, all of you who pay taxes in New York are paying one way or another if the prices are inflated or if there's an environmental problem or anything of the like. They also, attorneys general also have this other role, which is to provide legal advice. This is a generality. It will vary a little bit from state to state, but to provide legal advice to the governor, the legislature, and state officials so that you get a better policy. It's the attorney general who represents the state in court. There's a whole function that goes with representing the state of New York in the Supreme Court, at the local courts at all different levels. Okay, so now enough of that. Now that you've had a chance to think about this, Jason, in your 3 months,
yes,
a live example, speaking to the mic, you don't have to stand up unless you want to. Something you've seen that, you know, a case you can talk about, because as we know, a lot of, when cases are in progress, information, some of it is confidential. So to the extent you can talk.
Well, I would like to think that in my 3 months that I've resolved all legal problems for the state of New York, and I've put us all out of business. I think that this is more like a doctor who cures cancer. I think this, if we could do that, we'd all be happy to be unemployed. But I don't think there's any real risk of that happening. In my short tenure, I think the area that's been most challenging and most interesting to me is something that Dom knows well about. Because of the number and highly publicized instances of civilians dying either in police custody or as a result of a police shooting, Governor Cuomo signed an executive order which gave the Attorney General jurisdiction over certain sorts of instances where civilians die in law enforcement custody. And you can imagine that covers a wide array of situations, and sort of trying to figure out where this executive order should come into effect and when it shouldn't has been a matter, sort of as a lawyer, it's very interesting to sort of try to come up with principled, neutral grounds to determine when we should intervene and when we shouldn't. And just recently, within my 3-month period, this is all very public. Attorney General Schneiderman held a press conference about this, and a full report was released about a woman who died in police custody, in it being held over the weekend in a facility after she was arrested for shoplifting in Mount Vernon, New York. And our very exhaustive investigation that I can't claim any credit for it at all. By the time I came into the office, the investigation was virtually complete. So I really say this as a testament to how thorough and hardworking the entire process was. But at the end of this, the conclusion was that this particular individual died not as a result of any law enforcement activity, but because of systemic heart problems. Dealing with the family that obviously was very angry that their mother, in this case, she had several children, that their mother died under these somewhat suspicious circumstances, and explaining to them that that we weren't holding law enforcement accountable for her death. was very difficult. Obviously, dealing with the police department in these situations is a very sensitive process because their reputations and if they were to be prosecuted, their liberty could be on the line. So this is a situation where it's incredibly important that we get it right because we're under the spotlight. These are highly scrutinized cases. No one is going to be. You can't make everyone happy in a case, no matter what conclusion you reach. Somebody is going to be very disappointed and angry, unfortunately, just because of the size of our state and the number of occasions when civilians do, for one reason or another, die when in police custody, this is not an isolated case. We are going to have to continue to do these investigations, and I think I view that as one of the most challenging aspects of the job, but also one of the most rewarding, because we really do feel an absolute obligation to research it as thoroughly as we can and to make sure that whatever our conclusion, no matter who it appeases and who it angers, it's the right one.
And that's an example, that function I think is that's an example of an action taken to create this unit by a governor who was a former attorney general, Governor Cuomo. It's a really gutsy thing to do, to put the public light. I don't know of another office of attorney general that has done this. There may be one out there, but I think certainly New York was the first. And it's a very brave thing to do because it has a lot of risk, I think, attached to it. Sandy, what about you?
Well, I don't know. Do you want me to talk about my life as an attorney or my life as...
You can pick.
I can pick.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I was privileged as an attorney, as a deputy of the Healthcare Bureau, to work on 2 multi-state cases, one against a major health plan and another against giants of the pharmaceutical world. And those were big cases and they were important. But the one that spoke to my heart was the case that I handled by myself against an unlicensed health plan in New York City. And the reason that I'm proud of it is because Eliot Spitzer thought it was important enough to do a press release about it. And it was about a woman who was running a plan, taking premiums from citizens in this city, people who were working very hard for their money, and she was scamming them. She would take their premiums every month, dutifully, and then whenever they filed a claim to access those benefits that they were paying for each month, all of a sudden they were dropped off the plan. One couple was dropped off because they became pregnant. And her plan documents clearly indicated that, this was covered. Another couple, another person, and I'll never forget, I see this woman's face now. This was a woman who at that time she was about 60, 65 years old, and she'd been working as a waitress in a diner. She did not have much money, but she worked in the diner, and she was on a reputable health plan because she had osteoporosis, and she was on Fosamax, a medication that she had to have because of her bone condition. And she saw an advertisement for this unlicensed, illegal insurance health plan, and she dropped the legitimate plan and went to the other plan because it was cheaper. She signed up, she paid her premiums, and then when she said, okay, well, I need to get my Fosamax, she was told, oh, you don't need Fosamax. You should just practice good hygiene and eat vegetables. Well, when I started reading these kinds of complaints against this plan, my blood boiled, and I could not wait to shut this person down. And we shut her down, we froze her assets, we seized her assets, and I was doing it in a civil context, but I talked to our criminal people and I said, this person is so bad, she needs to go to jail. And they agreed with me. Now, unfortunately, the judge didn't put her in jail, but she was convicted of grand larceny as well as us seizing her assets and distributing back to the people that she sold them from. So that I will always treasure having that experience because I couldn't have done it anywhere other than an attorney general's office, I think, because it was in a civil context that I did it. There's so many unlicensed health plans that you could spend your whole career doing just those, but to know that we shut her down was great. And, you know, and on my legal recruitment side, you know, I've had the opportunity to, well, I've taken the liberty of pulling people aside saying, this resume isn't good. And I think they've appreciated that when I've given them some guidance on that.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
That's a tough question. I mean, there's
Yeah,
been
it
so
is a
many
tough
cases over the years that have come through that make you happy and proud that you participated in them. Our organized crime task force did a couple cases, took 90 illegal guns off the street, 75 in another. Those guns were going to be used to do bad things to good people. But I'm going to have to agree with Jason with the Special Investigations and Prosecutions Unit. It's very tough to go into something right off the bat knowing that at the end of the day, 50% of the people are going to be happy and 50% of the people are not going to be happy. You're going into this, when you catch one of, when we catch one of these cases right off the bat, this is what you're starting with, that, you know, we have to get it right, and we are going to get it right, and even though we're going to get it right, 50% of the people are going to be happy, and 50% of the people are not going to be happy. That's a pretty tough, it's a pretty tough thing to overcome, especially since this is new territory for the office. This is something that just came to us in July, I believe, and it wasn't something that we were doing before, and, you know, we had to make sure we got the right people assigned on both sides of the house, the attorney side, the investigator side, and, you know. And all I can say is, like Jason said, the night before that report came out in the Mount Vernon case, I was able to, you know, put my head on my pillow knowing that the press conference was the next day, and knowing that 50% of the people were not going to be happy, but knowing that it was thorough, it was complete, it was transparent, we had left nothing unturned. And, you know, I say all the time, people ask me about investigations all the time, and I say there's one thing in an investigation that can't change, and that's the facts. The facts are the facts. If you gather the facts and the case stands on the merit of the facts are the facts. And so I would say that that would probably be the most recent rewarding.
And you shouldn't get the wrong idea from this, by the way, that we issue this report and there's absolutely no movement on either side. The thoroughness of our report and the care that we took, I think, to communicate our results to all the affected members of the community, I think gained us some goodwill, and I thought appropriately, that this wasn't just sort of a whitewash of any kind, that a lot of thought had been given to it, and we'll see what the next case brings. You know, you have to take every case on its own merits. It's sort of like the dishwashing example, I guess, that Peter used before. If you do it right, you know, and you know it's a good report, and you know your results are solid, you can go to sleep at night feeling good.
Yeah, and as Peter said, a good job is a good job, even if you don't see it. That is what characterizes, to me, the work of the State Attorney General and all the people that you see up here, because if they're doing a good job, really you don't see all the hours that it took to get that report done. It's really a commitment to public service that gets it done. Believe me, it's not your paycheck. Angelita, so your role was a little bit different in that you were having to deal with the New York Attorney General, the California, we used to call it the left coast and the right coast, and all those people in the Midwest that maybe think the people in the Northeast are a little too gung-ho. How'd you do it? Example.
There were some challenges. I think when there was multi-state litigation and you had the challenge of the West Coast and the East Coast time differences, and the folks on the East Coast wanted to go ahead and release their news about what they had settled for in a an illegal case, and the people on the West Coast were like, no, you've got to wait because we want to get the optimum news coverage for what we've done. And so a lot of it was negotiating when you do something, who's the spokesperson, how it's conveyed, negotiating those messaging points for your narrative, what is it that we really want to say, and depending on where you lived and your constituency, that would also shape your messaging. folks in the Midwest may not care necessarily about what the folks on the West Coast wanted to hear about. So a lot of it was just kind of negotiating with different offices and understanding the needs of their communities that they served about what's most important and what is it that we needed to convey on a local level and also on a national level. We had a lot of attorneys general that were, I would say, very high profile, like the Elliot Spitzers, and then you had some that were not as much, who had, hopes of becoming more high profile. So kind of balancing those needs and those interests was definitely walking the tightrope most days. So.
And a lot of the work that state attorneys general do, it affects the stock market, because the actions that they're taking against the corporations of the world, which is just about everybody. I mean, to take one common example of the mortgage settlement, that influenced banks, that made it more difficult for you or your parents or your friends or anybody you know, perhaps to buy a home, and it may stay that way for a while. But it was the work of the state attorneys general really kind of across the board who saw something wrong and decided to get in and investigate it and change the conduct of an industry to make it really better for consumers. One tool, I can't tell if is it posted on, do we have the New York web up? No. But if we don't, one way you can find out, how do you find out even what attorneys general do? I call your attention, I happen to have this one little printout of Attorney General Eric Schneiderman's webpage, which really is, as I've looked at a lot of them, one of the best web pages because it is very vibrant and really tells you what's going on in a day-to-day. There's a series of press releases which tells you what happened. His initiatives are at the top. I'm happening to look at the one that I copied from yesterday, which says AG Schneiderman announces lawsuits against businesses for allegedly selling and shipping designer drugs statewide. Now, Dominic, drugs really aren't a problem in New York, are they?
Drugs? What are drugs?
There you go. Okay, so audience time. What's on your minds? Yeah.
I know there's a lot of complaints that people want to get addressed at the Attorney General level. So do all of the complaints get investigated? And if not, how do the Attorney General office choose what complaints do get investigated?
Who would like that
I guess
question?
I'll take that. But Dom should really be the one to answer that, but I'll let him off the hot seat. I think the short answer is that any complaint that's made really has to get looked at somewhat, right? Look, if it doesn't sound like such a serious complaint, that my neighbor keeps turning his radio on too loud at 3 a.m, not really sort of our jurisdiction, not something we're going to do much about. But assuming that it's something that falls within our very wide jurisdiction, and it's a serious enough problem to warrant attention, we really should look into it, and we should get back to the person who leveled the complaint to say what the result was, even if it was, I'm so sorry, we sympathize, but for various reasons, we can't do anything about it. And I know we have offices, we have one up in Harlem, we've got one in Brooklyn, we've got them on Long Island, so right here, locally in the New York area, we do have walk-in offices that people can come to bring their complaints, and if they bring in their complaint, they should get an answer.
What else? Thank you.
My question is, how does the Attorney General's office differ from New York District Attorney, Manhattan DA or something? Are they similar or different? And what may be the difference?
Or do you want to answer?
Go ahead.
You can both answer that.
Yeah, well, our jurisdiction, even though we have criminal jurisdiction and we also have civil jurisdiction. Our criminal jurisdiction, we don't focus on street crimes necessarily. Maybe upstate, we do some where we assist those DA's offices because they're smaller and understaffed. But in New York City, you've got the Manhattan DA, the King's DA, in Brooklyn and Queens and Staten Island. So those offices are very vibrant and active toward prosecuting your basic street crimes. So we don't do the law and order stuff. We are basically white-collar crime.
And the bulk, what you should really understand is 700, I forget what our most recent number is, but I think statewide we have somewhere around 700 lawyers. I think numerically the largest group among those 700 do civil defense work. In other words, New York State is sued for a bunch of things. You know, if there's a highway that was allegedly not repaired adequately, that caused a traffic accident, and somebody sues New York State for the damages resulting from that accident, it's our office, because our office really is the law firm for New York State. And a lot of our lawyers do just civil defense work. We also have civil affirmative work. DA's offices do criminal. We do both criminal, which makes our office somewhat unusual. We both do criminal prosecutions, but also civil affirmative actions, like in the residential mortgage, backed securities area. So we have a very wide breadth of cases that we do. And our boss, unlike in New Jersey, our boss is an elected official. So it makes, it's a very interesting and challenging environment. I think that's really unlike any other law office anywhere.
But to add to that, nationally, it's really a mixed bag out there. When you look at New Jersey, people generally think of New Jersey as the top cop. And the reason for that, I think, is because it controls every law enforcement function. It oversees the prosecutors. He's really got, that office really has a large amount of power. To switch to a neighboring state here, if you look at Connecticut, my state, Connecticut Attorney General has no criminal jurisdiction except for some fluke, I don't know how this got in there, home repair fraud. It is really the local prosecutor who really has all the kind of day-to-day crime. There's 4 states where the Attorney General is the district attorney, the complete criminal, such as Rhode Island or Delaware, and a large part of their portfolio, while they do all the consumer protection stuff as well, it's really criminal work. All offices handle criminal appeals nationwide, but there's a vast array of difference on the criminal side in their authority. So, for example, just to talk about this a little bit more, when there is a school shooting, let's take school shootings as an example, is there a role for the New York AG? Not at all, right? Okay, if you not at all.
Not in the first instance, not
in
initially.
the first instance. If you switch to the Columbine event, remember the Columbine event? Okay. So who was the first line law enforcement official on the scene? It was the district attorney. It was only later, as this investigation went on and the Department of Justice started looking at it, that suddenly people started questioning whether the district attorney, as I recall this, had really done everything that a district attorney was supposed to do. So what do they do when that happens? The governor says, I need the attorney general to investigate. And then everybody gets really annoyed because the attorney general gets this hot potato, investigate it, but the undercurrent is maybe so-and-so didn't do this, that, or the other, maybe the evidence wasn't protected, maybe this or that. So it's quite a variance really around the country based on what we would say are the powers and duties of the Office of Attorney General. On the civil side, in consumer protection, because I thought you were asking a question also about consumer, I've come to believe there's a consumer fraud under every corner. Anybody had their identity stolen? Yes. Okay, anybody lost a driver's license? Have you lost okay, haven't lost a driver's license. Anybody tried to buy something on the web where the product wasn't delivered? What happened when you did that?
I made the mistake of buying something on eBay and just never got it. I think it was like my fault, sort of just like trusting the...
And did you do anything about it or just go, I'm never doing this again?
Yeah, that was my initial thought, but then I made a complaint and it sort of wasn't even, I didn't even get a response about it.
Oh, it's too bad you didn't. It's too bad you didn't know us then, because eBay has businesses, good businesses. Really, all of them have people who do consumer protection work. And I don't know this, but it's entirely possible that the New York Attorney General has, in the consumer protection area, a complaint file of 1,000 use. And then the question is, what happens from there? What would happen from there if there were 1,000 use?
Probably our internet
Bureau
Yeah.
would investigate, and they would determine if there was some common scheme, and, you know, if there was some true fraud, or was there something that you didn't understand, or it was disclosed, or if it's not transparent, because that's what consumer protection is really about, transparency and making sure that you know that the terms of the deal. And if you weren't disclosed with some information that was vital, then that's a problem. Or they didn't fulfill their end of whatever terms were disclosed.
You know, so one thing we hope you take away from today is be good consumers. And when the Department of Homeland Security sees something, say something, sometimes applies when you're just in your day-to-day life as a consumer. If you don't ever speak up about it, it's likely happened to, it's not only you.
Yeah, and we keep records, so we'll know if there's a pattern.
That's right, because that's what happened in that case I told you about. We had several consumers, they didn't know each other, but they kept filing complaints. And then when you aggregate those complaints and you go, this is fraudulent, you figure it out.
Check the website too, because we are continuously issuing consumer alerts. So if we get wind of a scam and we realize that, hey, a lot of people are going to be affected by this, the AG will issue a consumer alert and put it on the website and get it out in the public. So, it's a way of maybe avoiding finding yourself in the same situation.
If I could add, the office also issues a newsletter periodically. So if you would like to receive that newsletter, I have a sign-up sheet on the desk outside, and you can sign up to receive the newsletter. You can sign up to receive job announcements or student postings. So sign up.
I highly recommend the newsletter because I have signed up. It's really very good. Just one other area, and then see if there are any more questions. One of the important things. How many people have grandparents in nursing homes? Anybody? Parents in nursing homes? No, anybody who's in a nursing home. Lots of issues, lots of problems, lots of issues, lots of problems. And the Attorney General's offices across the country are very involved with issues like elder abuse, Medicaid fraud, and a whole host of other things.
Absolutely.
More questions? Any more questions? Yeah.
How do you guys deal with the 50-50 cases, like you said before, like half people being happy, half being frustrated? And why do you continue to do what you do?
That's a really great question.
I think both of us are going to give the same answer. So I'll go first, and Tom will tell me if I'm right or not. One of the wonderful, wonderful things about our job is that we don't have a client in the traditional sense of the word. We don't have somebody who has a preordained agenda, and our job as lawyers or investigators is to massage the law or massage the facts so that we get to the result that the client wants. So if 50% of the people are happy and 50% of the people are angry, that probably means we did it right, I mean, if 99% of the world is like outraged at what we did, that suggests to me, well, maybe we got it wrong. Even though it's a political office in the literal sense of the word, in that the top guy, our Attorney General Schneiderman, is an elected official, he's very clear, and there's no doubt in any of our minds, that our job is simply to, as Dom said before, to get it right and sleep well at night. So that's why we do it. That's not a problem with the job. That's probably its most appealing aspect, and it's one of the primary reasons I left private practice after so many years to come back to government service.
If I told you you were wrong and just left it at that, would you be happy? No, but if I told you you were wrong and gave you an explanation as to why or how we came to that conclusion and to point it out, you would understand, right? So communication in these type of cases, we didn't just grab one side and say, this is it, we did our investigation, these are the findings, and we left it at that. There was a lot of effort bringing in, a lot of thought and a lot of effort given to bringing in the people who were concerned and explaining to them how we've reached the conclusions that we have reached, and we provided them with a lot of the facts. One of the things that the AG's office can do differently than a DA is we don't have to do everything by grand jury subpoena. So that gives us more transparency, and we can get more information out, and we can give more facts than the DA can. So again, to me, it was a big part of being successful was communication and explaining to those involved why we came to the conclusions that we did, and at the end of the day, the conclusion stood on the facts. And I think that was very helpful in you know, getting us to the point that it got us to.
One last question? Yeah.
Well, just briefly, like real quick, I was just curious to know, say, what are some of the aspects you guys deal with, or some of the crimes that you guys apprehend? If it's not really like street crimes, like what are some of the things that you guys deal with? I was just curious to know. Like what kind of white collar crimes? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. We do street crime. We're broken down into several different units throughout the state. We have the criminal enforcement financial crimes unit. They'll do financial crimes, and they'll also do any type of criminal prosecutions of a general nature, maybe a grand larceny or a theft. We have the Public Integrity Bureau. They do investigations on public corruption. We have auto insurance fraud unit. They do auto insurance fraud investigations. Medicaid fraud unit, which is probably the biggest part of our office with the most lawyers and investigators. They do anything to do with Medicaid. We do organized crime task force. They do traditional organized crime, such as the Gambinos, the Colombos. They do gang-related cases. They do gun cases. They do major narcotics cases throughout the state. We have computer forensic investigative team. They do all the forensic work on computers and cell phones in-house for us after we've come across them in investigations. We have special operations unit. They go out in the middle of the night and they hang cameras, and they do all types of technical work. And every unit plays into, you know, depending on what type of case it is, there's always a need for some sort of specialized work. And so we have it all covered, from street crime to financial crime to public integrity to special investigations and prosecutions, which are, you know, that's in custody of law enforcement.
Right. But a pickpocket or something that's sort of an isolated one-on-one crime, that's not going to be us. That's going to be the DA.
Right. No.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have one last question over there.
Okay, my question, hi, my name is Dane Shillingford. My question is, considering that now that we're college students, we're here being sensitized about the work of the Attorney General, does the Attorney General office have any sensitization unit where you go into communities and you conduct community-based workshops as to where people can bring in their complaints or understand the role of the Attorney General's office? Because I'm sitting down here and I'm like, okay, I didn't know their jurisdiction was that wide, and they did so much of this work. Some people sometimes might not be, they do not want to come out and complain, whether it be because of immigration status or because of them being a prior felon. So what is the Attorney General's office doing to sensitize citizens about the role of the Attorney General and coming out to speak so that we can get more cases and more justice for the citizens of New York?
Well, we have regional offices, and in those regional offices, we usually have someone who's, I think, designated as a public advocate. They do a lot of outreach. We really do outreach from all of our bureaus. Any bureau who has an issue that's important to the community, they'll do an event out in the public, but I think it happens more so in from the regional offices. But we have a regional office in Harlem, and he's in that community talking about consumer issues and consumer rights and what the office is doing all the time. We have a regional office in Brooklyn, and they're in Brooklyn and Queens constantly reaching out to the community, talking about the services. They're the ones who take the calls about the gas gouging when the Hurricane Sandy hit. So all of our regional offices do that, and if there's any of our bureaus in Manhattan and there's a particular need or request, they'll do that as well. So the office is very actively involved in doing that kind of outreach and making people aware of what services we provide. That's why we're here today.
But it's a big state, so
That's right.
get the word out for us.
That's right. We need the help. That's right. We appreciate it.
Okay, well, now we're supposed to, this was a terrific panel. I hope you know more now than when you started. So let's thank the panelists. And then to say, I don't really have closing remarks other than to say, I hope you know, and then I think Dr. Davidson might, I hope you know more now about this mysterious Office of Attorney General than you did when you came in. You know, through my entire career of 27 years with state AGs, this was the focus from day one, which is how do you translate to the public what this office is? The bigger the cases are and the more press it gets, whether it's tobacco or it's mortgages or whatever, people lose sight of really, you know, they might get it for 5 minutes when it's their form, but it's an ongoing effort really that's needed that AGs try to do, lots of outreach in the community, in the schools, to try to explain what it is they do. Because if, you know, people don't love lawyers all the time these days. And I can see the smiles on your faces.
My wife expresses equivocation every once in a while.
That's why I married one, so I wouldn't have to worry about it.
And I'm married to one too. So, you know, but it's a constant translating role of what is this office? How can it be on 2 sides or 3 sides of an issue? How can you do criminal work and civil work at the same time? And it's so on and so on and so on. And remember that it's an office that's funded largely, not exclusively, by tax dollars, by federal grants. Some offices in various places have units that are funded, environmental units, for example, that are funded by fines and penalties they collect. So it's a whole different scheme depending on which area that you are in. So it's very important. Go tell your families and friends that you heard about what an AG does. And then look at the web page.
Oh, really look at the web page. There's a lot of information there, a lot.
We're now really approaching.
I really just wanted to say thank you all once again. I mean, this day was really, for me anyway, it was educational in the best sense of the word, right? It was informative. I hope you all know more about the work of this great office. I mean, I hope you know, well, I know a lot more than I did, and I'm a lawyer, right? So I hope that you all know a lot more. So it was educational, but I think it was something else. I felt that this day was really inspirational. I think you all really did an amazing job today. I think this is, for me, and please tell me, someone yell out, what's your biggest takeaway of the day? What's your biggest takeaway? Yeah, Rochelle, I saw that fist pump. What's the takeaway? What's your takeaway? Inspiring, yeah. Inspiring, yeah. What, yes, yes. Where do you sign up? There's on the website.
That's why I applied.
That's right.
And I think that says everything. I think that I really do think that says everything about the success of what you all did today. That really this was you all. We learned more, but you know, as General Harvey said, you know, information is out there. You can go to Google and find this stuff out if you knew what to ask. I mean, this information is out there. What you can't get on Google, though, is this, right? The inspiration. You can't get the message that you got from General. That's not on Google. You'll not get that, right? So this day to me was really, really extraordinary. And I just want to thank you all once again for coming to John Jay. I think you've given our students something really great. And now I'm going to invite you to the second half of the day, though, and this is equally important and equally as educational. We are going to have a networking opportunity and a reception outside, so I want you all to really take advantage of this opportunity to speak to the panelists, speak to our guests who've come, ask them the questions you didn't get to ask today, and really, and again, take advantage of this, because one of the big takeaways for me was the fact that many of the people here expressed the fact that these careers were not a given for them. They didn't come into this thinking, I'm going to the Office of the Attorney General. These things happened because these people showed up, they asked questions, and they found something that was interesting to them. And I encourage you all to do that today. We have a reception now, and I want you all to get out there and mingle and network and make contacts and connections. Thank you all again so much for coming today. And thank you all again. Thank you.